Some 30,000 workers, farmers, and students marched in Seoul on Sunday, demanding speedy reforms to overcome South Korea's prolonged economic crisis. Before starting the 2 kilometers, 1.25-mile, march in the south of the capital, the protesters issued a statement accusing the government of not doing enough to tackle the economic crisis which started a year ago. More than 10,000 riot police were deployed to deal with any possible violence. There were some scuffles between police and demonstrators, but no reports of any arrests or serious clashes. The march followed a rally on a river bank, where participants strongly criticized what they felt was a lack of progress in resolving South Korea's economic crisis. The rally organizers, representing 60 labor and community groups, called on the government to disband debt-ridden conglomerates and boost financial assistance for the unemployed. South Korea's family-controlled chaebol, or conglomerates, have been criticized for borrowing heavily to expand their businesses. Experts said the practice is partly the cause of South Korea's present economic woes. IMF crisis in December 1997 was a painful blow to Koreans who have not seen a major recession during the last 15 years. There had not been a major corporate shakeup during the time of continued expansion. Korean companies competed in borrowing from domestic and foreign firms to grow in assets that further appreciated 10% on the average. The prospect of IMF bailout was a humiliating blow to the Korean people who achieved an economic miracle with 8.2% annual GDP growth over 3 decades. During the time, Koreans raised annual incomes from $80 in 1960 to over $10,000. Korean government supported conglomerates such as Samsung, Hyundai to borrow and grow, which gotten out of the hand. In early November 1997, banks that lent wantonly to chaebols held at least $52 billion in bad debt, 17% of their total debt. Sensing blood, traders attacked the Korean currency, driving the won from 844 won to the dollar in January to almost 1,000 in November, and pushing it further to almost 2,000 one time in December. As of February 1998, the ratio remained as 1,600 to $1. 11 chaebols collapsed during 1997 and 10 more out of the 50 largest chaebol were at the risk of bankruptcy. Bankrupt chaebol cost South Korea $100 billion, 20% of the country's $500 billion economy. Example is automaker, Kia, collapsed with $10.7 billion of debt. Trouble with chaebols pushed the banking system over the edge. Debt-choked companies have triggered a bank crisis and the government ran low on foreign reserves. Feared investors dumped their stocks and amassed dollars, depressing the won. In early November 1997, American experts believed that Korea might need as much as $40 billion from IMF for a bailout. December election delayed government's aggressive move towards IMF and labor issues. Eventually, $60 billion were promised to Korea by IMF in December. The IMF provided a $58.4 billion bailout to South Korea to help the country avoid default on its external debts. The financing was not provided unconditionally. The condition was that Korea had to agree with the IMF about macroeconomic as well as financial and corporate restructuring policies during the 3 years of the program. Impact of IMF on the Korean economy. Korean economy showed signs of recovery in such areas as current account surplus, trade surplus, debt restructuring, and chaebol's announcement of restructuring plan. In its desperate attempt to invite foreign direct investment to the country, Korean government implemented drastic reforms allowing 100% foreign ownership of Korean listed companies by the end of 1998. The IMF had asked for 55% ownership earlier. Stock price also was allowed to fluctuate within 10% a day from the previous 6% limit. Despite some positive impact on the horizon, Korean government, companies, and labor had to share bitter realities that were imposed upon them during the IMF crisis. High interest rates. Small and medium companies suffer more because of the rates that have doubled. The vast majority of Korean manufacturers owe some $300 billion of won-denominated debt to local banks and other Korean firms. Just when rates are hitting record highs, high interest rates signal the signs pointing to a big deterioration in the business climate. One Korean expert expects as many as 30,000 small and medium companies will go bankrupt in 1998. Currency crisis and debt burden. The currency crisis is not over yet, even though the possibility of moratorium appears to be over. The $1 ratio hovers around 1,300 to 1,400 won to a dollar. It used to be 800 to 1 a year ago. Weak Korean currency gave Korean Chaebol's $8 billion extra burden on interest payment to foreign investors. Korean debt total of estimated $150 billion. Massive layoff. Layoffs have just begun. The impact will be felt beginning the summer of 1998. In the absence of government welfare system like the US's and Western European countries, Korean public fears their future. In May 1998, the unemployment rate already reached at the level of 6.5% from 2.5% before the crisis. It was tough and humiliating time for South Korea. The rapidity of Korea's recovery from the crisis was highlighted on August 23, 2001, when Korea repaid the IMF in full. Many Koreans were against IMF funding, and that government did little to help middle class and was much invested in saving the rich business.
We cannot stand this kind of attacks on the lives of the people. That the government must oppose the very radical programs of the IMF and start to work on to defend the lives of the people.